guys. So I have been looking forward really for this past, probably 4 or 5 days to sitting down and having a chance to talk a little more in depth about my visit with Straitway. I have to start by showing off this really pretty shirt that Pastor Dowell gave me with a Straitway logo, a beautiful purple shirt, and I really like it. I thank you for it. But on our way back last weekend, my wife and I were invited a few weeks ago, and last weekend we went to Straitway and spent a weekend there and had a chance to participate in a lot of different things, walk around and visit, ask a lot of questions, spend some time with Pastor Dowell, with Mama Carol, with the family as a whole, with a number of people on the Straitway community. And for me, it was an opportunity to ask a lot of questions, and then to do a lot of processing afterwards, and kind of come back and give some thoughts and some of my some of what I experienced and some of what I felt and this sort of thing. So I have had a chance to kind of process this week, and I've got a lot of good things, and I still have a couple things that I kind of, I guess maybe just some things I do differently. So I want to share some of those different pieces. I want to walk through the weekend and give you a feel for everything that we had for the weekend. So for us, the weekend we arrived there about 2:15, 2:30-ish, maybe 2 o'clock-ish on Friday afternoon. The camp was, I guess camp isn't the right word. The community, the hub, was very quiet. It was very peaceful. My first thoughts as we drove in, really, we got off of I-40 headed north, and we were probably, 40 or 50 miles east of Nashville. And when we turned north, I had probably 130 miles in the gas tank, and so I thought, I'd like to top off before Shabbat, before the weekend. It's my habit to try to have everything ready to go on first day of the week, so that I don't have to worry about stopping and getting fuel, or if anything happens, I've already got a load of fuel. So as we got off the interstate, we were about an hour away, and I thought, we'll get within about 20 minutes and then stop and get some gas. Go to the bathroom, what have you, before we got there, so that we we didn't show up and say, "Hey, where's your bathroom?" Because we'd been on the road for hours and hours at that point. The countryside approaching is absolutely beautiful. Lots of rolling hills, green farmland. It's wonderful, and I've got to tell you that there's not a filling station. There's not a filling station anywhere. There might be one that we passed going through the last little town. I remember on our way out, I took a look and I went, oh yeah, there is one there. But I'm telling you what, there's no gas. There's very, very little anywhere even remotely close to Pastor Dowell. What I found out later on is they actually have a fueling station or a place that they store some fuel on the hub, or in the community. So that should have been a question that I had asked in advance. In terms of remoteness, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I absolutely loved that. I'm a big fan of being out away from the big city and that sort of thing. So as we turned down one small road onto a smaller small road onto a smaller small road, finally hitting a little bit of gravel and then pavement right there for that last segment. I was amazed at the beauty, at the tranquility, and everything heading in. And for those who have been there, you know that it's just these little winding things, and then all of a sudden you can start seeing pieces of the community as you descend down into the valley where the community, actually the central part of the community actually is. And as we pulled in, or as we descended down in there, there were a couple things that I saw there, and I thought, I don't know if that looks like their buildings, because I've watched a number of their building videos. That looks like some of their stuff, but I'm not sure. And then, of course, we got down to the community, and I looked back and I thought, I don't know. I'm not sure. Well, once we got there, there was nobody around. We got out of the car and started walking around, looking around, and a young man by the name of Brett met us and greeted us and directed us to where we needed to go, because I wasn't even sure which house was Pastor Dowell's. Most of them are very similar in appearance, very similar, fairly similar in size. There's not a big difference in size in the structures, and he directed us to where we needed to go, and we knocked on the door. I will say that right from the beginning, the grounds were immaculate. Now, we have been homesteaders for roughly 20 years. We've been this is our third property that we've had. We had one for about 10 years. We had one for a very short period of time that we were renting, but maintained some of our livestock on and did some gardening and farming and work around the place for the short period of time we were there, and then we purchased the home that we're in now. So we're familiar with homesteads, we're familiar with farmsteads or small agricultural and livestock operations. And I'm telling you, it's a lot of work to keep them neat. It's a lot of work to keep it clean. And I was very impressed right from the beginning. It seemed to be very well laid out, seemed to be extremely well manicured. We got a chance even to take a peek at some of the gardens and raised beds before our tour with Pastor Dowell, and I'm here to tell you, I was very impressed with how absolutely immaculate they were. So we now you remember from Pastor Dowell and I did a blog talk radio on Friday evening together. I think it was on Friday evening that he mentioned his son Hezekiah coming out of the door, looking out and going, "They're here!" And that's exactly how we were greeted as we came up to the door. He was very excited, and of course I recognized him from a number of the videos that I've seen in following Pastor Dowell and just really trying to get a feel for and understand. Certainly a great deal of respect for a lot of things that he teaches, and we have a lot of agreement in a lot of areas. So, and I've seen, the fishing videos and others in the Patreon, in addition to other things that Pastor Dowell teaches in the Patreon, in his Patreon channel. So I had seen that. So we got in there, and I gave him a hug, and the ladies gave Kelly a hug, and almost immediately he said, "Can we wash your feet?" And of course, Kelly talked about that on the previous video that we did as we were leaving, and so you can see that just a couple videos ago in our archive here. But that was kind of special. I can probably count on one hand the number of times I have had my feet washed, and I'd have fingers left over. So I was quite surprised that was the immediate greeting, and that was refreshing. It was very refreshing right from the beginning, and I saw throughout the weekend in a lot of different places and a lot of different times a great deal of humility on the part of Pastor Dowell, a great deal of concern for others and a real desire to walk in righteousness and walk at peace with his brothers and everything else. And it was a different side from what you see on the camera persona or the camera side often. And I kind of expected that, but I wasn't 100% sure, and it was very cool to see. So he washed my feet, and Sister Carol, Mama Carol washed Kelly's feet, and then he immediately said, "Let's go for a tour of the property." Now I realized with the time that we got there, we were kind of up against the clock. It's a Rev Shabbat, getting ready for the evening meal for Shabbat. So we hopped in. First we walked through the lower portion of the property. I was not sure how large it is. It's my understanding, if I remember correctly, that he started with about 27 acres, and they have since purchased adjoining pieces and have access through maybe a leasing arrangement or a maintenance arrangement with a couple more pieces that are adjacent to them. Beautiful, beautiful piece of property with a large running creek on one side of it, flanked by some real tall hills on the other side. And it's a long, narrow. The central community is a long, narrow community with houses along the creek. So just amazing for those who are living right there along the creek. Have the creek, and they're literally right there, just a few feet from their back steps. Imagine children in the summertime absolutely enjoy that creek. But we had a chance to walk through their greenhouses, and he was pointing out plants, and of course Kelly and I were asking some technical questions on how they raise some different things, and some of the different, I was making note of how they, some of their climbing system for plants and some of that. He was showing off some of the new things with the greenhouse upgrades that they had just done on their large greenhouse. We looked at the raised beds that have been up for years. Beautiful, lots of very mature fruit trees. He took us on down, and we saw the dining facility, or the dining hall, and some of the shower setups that they have when they have literally hundreds and hundreds, maybe 1,000, 1,500 people at the feasts. And of course, this coming weekend they're getting ready for Shavuot. I'm sure there are a whole lot of Straitway peeps on the road right now headed to Straitway. Maybe some of them already on the property. So shalom to you guys. We really got a good look at kind of the mechanism, the workings of the community in that segment, and then he took us up the hill so that we could see their initial tabernacle, where I guess the first tabernacle they had was the dining hall, and then later they built a small tabernacle farther up the hill, and then next to that they outgrew the second tabernacle and had to build an even larger one that is large. It's a good sized building that they'll continue to grow into for a while, but literally that's where they have their Shabbat services now. Very large, very nice. It was cool walking in there and taking a look around and seeing that building, just beautiful. Everything built by the hands of the men and women and families that live on the property there, or live in the community. Fabulous, fabulous. A lot of really nice workmanship. Fantastic. I was very impressed with all of that. And of course, you know, my grandfather was a woodworker, and I lived in community myself. I grew up in a community in South America, so I spent 6 years on a remote community, no electricity, no running water. You know, we lived in the jungle. We were 60 miles from the closest electricity, and my dad was a bush pilot, bringing supplies in and out for whatever we didn't grow on the property. So I'm familiar with community from that perspective. After having just a thorough tour, he took us down so that we could drop off our bags, and introduced us to Elder Becker and his wife. If I remember correctly, it was Elder Becker. Doug, I think, was his name. And his wife, I believe, was Diane. And they had an amazing, beautiful little cottage way back, tucked back in the woods, with just a stunning view of the valley from the other end, looking down into it. It was amazing, and I covet their backyard. It was so quiet, with a fire pit back there and some chairs sitting around, and I thought, man, if we were here 2 more days and the weather was nice, I would find time to sit back here around a fire and just hang out, because that was just an amazing spot. They were fantastic hosts. all kinds of goodies sitting there by the bedroom where we had, and it was amazing. But quickly we had to get ready and head back over for Shabbat dinner with the Dowells. It's my understanding that generally during the week, I think 4 days a week, they eat breakfast and dinner together at the community dining hall. And the typical routine during the day, during your common weekdays, not on Rev Shabbat, and of course Shabbat itself being different still, but during the regular weekdays, first day through the fifth day of the week, is going to be usually breakfast in the morning, somewhere around 8 o'clock, I think, and there may be some work going on prior to that. Then there's some work that happens after that, and pretty quickly I think most of the ladies have the outside and community work finished that they have to do so that they can tend to family. There is a small school on the property. They do their own homeschooling, and that is fantastic. Kudos. Some of the men work off property, some of the men work on property and are full-time in terms of doing more of the infrastructure and day-to-day operations of the community. So, but on Friday, Rev Shabbat, they have each family has their own Shabbat dinner at their own residence, and so we ate with the Dowells. As part of our tour, he took us by and introduced us to Sister Lillian, I think, if I remember the name correctly. I did not make a lot of notes. I probably should have. But I think Sister Lillian is a senior lady that lives on the property, has a very nice cottage that she shares with another lady, if I'm not mistaken. But one of the really cool things is in Israel, and if we look at the church, if we look at the world out there, a lot of people farm out their elderly to go to the nursing home or whatever, and then farm out, I guess, post-mortem care, however you want to say that. Not so with this community, and so Sister Lillian came over and had dinner with the Dowells, but she's living there on the property, and I think she's in her mid or late 80s, and maybe a couple other senior members in the community as well. Dinner itself was amazing. It was delicious, good fellowship, sitting around the table with Pastor Dowell and Mama Carol and Sister, I'm going to start calling names, Sister Summer and Sister, I'm in trouble now. My wife could help me out, but she's back here right now. Time out. And Sister Nellie. And Hezekiah, I guess. I don't remember if there was anybody else there for dinner, and Sister Lillian. But fantastic dinner, good fellowship, had a great time talking, had a great time just beginning to kind of get to know them. What was most exciting and interesting to me was just watching the dynamic, particularly between the ladies. I've been around, my wife and I have been around a number of different families that are plural families, and watching the dynamic between the wives and how the wives respond to the husband is always telling. And I can tell you this, the dynamic in that household is fabulous. It is absolutely fabulous. Every bit of that was amazing to watch, and it was well oiled in terms of a machine, just everybody knowing their roles, knowing their parts, knowing what to do, but it was not mechanical. It was very fluid, it was very relaxed, it was very joyful. It's the ideal. It's the thing that every man wants for the way his home should run, whether he has one woman or 3 or 4 or 5, whatever. And that was fun to watch. That really was a blessing and a joy to observe that firsthand. Because it's easy for people to tell you, oh yeah, no, they're doing really well, or you know, but you see it firsthand and have a chance over the course of several days to see it again and again and again, and how those ladies work together, and each knows what they're doing, and all of it is well coordinated, and not in any way that there was no air being put on. This was very obviously how they normally operate, and just their person and how they function. And that was amazing. It was fun to watch. So after dinner, I had been invited to be on Blog Talk Radio with Pastor Dowell, and that whole episode, the date would have been May the 19th, 2023. So you could go back if you wanted to look in his archives and see the show. We had an amazing show. It was a lot of fun. It was fun to watch the setup. I was interested in the technical side. His office is way smaller than I thought. In fact, the first time I walked in there, I recognized it immediately from so many of his videos. And I walked in there and I went, what? It's tiny. It's big enough to do what needs to be done, and that's good. It's not excessive in what is being done there, and so that was good to see. Lots of books, but a number of chairs around the perimeter and stuff, because as the show was getting ready to start, multiple other men filed in. I don't even remember the names of all of them. I guess Brother Shane and Brother TJ are the two that I remember. There were at least two, maybe three more that were in there with us, and we had a good time. We had a great time. And what was interesting about it is, as soon as the show started, the ladies came in with snacks, and they're handing out bowls of fruit, and they're handing out chips and dip, and it was I was like, I'm going to leave here 10 pounds heavier. And it kept coming, just a lot of food. But it was good fellowship. It was fun. It was relaxing. It was just great. It was a great environment. Everywhere that I went all weekend long was a great environment to be in. I would want, if I had small children or younger children, I would want them in that environment all the time. It's an immersive place to really hear and walk and see righteousness. So after that, it was late. Show was over. I'd recommend going and seeing the show. It was excellent. We had a good time. And then from there, we headed back to our cabin and got some sleep. And in the morning, we were up fairly early, so that, let's see, what was our routine in the morning? I normally don't eat breakfast, and so we didn't do anything for grabbing breakfast instead. I think that our hostess had graciously had some things for breakfast, and I just don't do I don't do breakfast. But we got down to the tabernacle about 10:30 or 10:15-ish, about 10:15, and the service was supposed to start at about 11, or the service starts at 11, with a big meal afterwards. When we got to the tabernacle, there were a couple people in there, not many. It was raining, and when I walked in, I guess the first thing that I did was I asked if I needed to take my shoes off. And indeed, they have racks at the back, and everybody takes their shoes off, so everybody's in sock feet inside of the tabernacle, or the fellowship hall that is called the tabernacle. The men all sit in the front maybe 7 or 8 rows, something like that. I didn't count. And then ladies are all behind that. And I went in and sat down, and was looking in my Bible, and was just sitting there and praying. And I noticed that others, as they came in, would not just sit in their seat and pray, but instead would turn around and get on their knees and pray. I watched fathers with young sons, lots of men, all ages, come in. It was very quiet. It was expectant. Solemn isn't quite the right word. It was very quiet with just a heavy air of expectation as everyone came in. The ladies with the young children and the girls were in the back part, and same thing, sitting on the floor or kneeling at their seats in prayer as we moved toward the 11 o'clock hour. I forget what I did right at, I think I had to go to the bathroom. I left to go to the bathroom or whatever because I didn't want to have to interrupt the service. I went running out to use the restroom, came running back in. And as I came back in, the service had just started. The music was getting started. And when that started, they went straight to worship, and the worship was off the chain. I guess started initially maybe with a meet and greet, all the men down front and just walking around. And I was walking around greeting guys, a lot of guys that I think I have interacted with through my YouTube channel in the comments section. But a lot of guys just, recognizing me and welcoming me, but hugs, lots of hugs. Just an amazing, very close-knit and a caring body of men who are men, men's men, but also very, very affectionate in terms of their love for each other. Ladies not mixed in that group. Again, separation between the male and female sections. No wall, just a known place where the ladies don't come up into this section, and vice versa. Very, very encouraging. Reminded me a little bit of some of the Orthodox synagogues that we have had opportunity to visit. However, a lot of times there's actually a physical barrier or even a visual barrier where you can't see past those. Once we headed into worship, the section worshiping down front with the men was virtually a mosh pit. Just excited, dance, major praise and worship. Anybody that wants to go back and see that worship service, it also is on video, it's on screen. And after the worship, Pastor Dowell asked me to address, and I had a chance to address just for a minute the fellowship. And it was good to be among men. After the worship, there was a time of prayer and deliverance. During that time frame, I had an interview with Brother Michael Israel, and he is one of their technical guys. I got to ask technical questions on a lot of the cameras and everything else. I've been curious about how the operation runs in that regard, and asking about the equipment and some of that. A lot of very, very interesting things. Very good, nice setup. And then we went around to the old tabernacle for lunch. Typically in the meal and the afternoon session, it's my understanding that it usually goes until, 5:30 or 6, whenever everybody decides to file out and head for the house. We went around there, and there's an elders table on one side. There's some of the elders' wives and Pastor Dowell's family on the other side, with the serving tables in the middle, and then everything farther back is families that eat at tables together. The food itself is all prepared on the property by some of the ladies on Erev Shabbat, the day before, and then heated or warmed that day for being served, and it's all served out of the community larder. The the meal that we had was amazing. It was deer roast and some of the best mac and cheese I've ever had. It was off the chain. Um, I forget what else we had. The desserts were absolutely incredible. There was some key lime pie that I had that was just fabulous. I used the line I always use. I will run over old women and small children for key lime pie and red velvet cake. And I think both were available, but I only had the key lime pie. And a lot of fellowship, just sitting around the table, enjoying talking with the elders, talking with some of the men. Some of them came and gathered chairs just right up around us, and so I was talking with some of the others. I had conversation with, I remember Brother Steve Regis, also talking to Off-Grid Victory. And so, and he needs to reach out to me because I want to find out how to grow grass. He's apparently he knows a lot more about pasturing cattle, and I need to get some input for my pastures here. I've got to do some work on them. So that was good. So a lot of this we're just trading information as well. It was fantastic. Then let's see, others that were there. I met a number of other brothers and elders, Brother Freshour, and some of the elders that I've met, Elder Chris, and again, it's just so many names, hard to keep up with all of the ones that we were able to meet. But what was cool was having access to a lot of people and being able to ask a lot of questions and look a lot of people in the eye and hear their voice, hear what they have to say, and just a lot of positive things that I was hearing and getting from Straitway and how they do things. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in just a minute. Then, I guess a little bit mid-afternoon, late afternoon, a couple of them got on the keyboard and the drums, and all of a sudden the place was thumping again. And worship and the men dancing, the whole place. It was loud. It was fun. It was just exciting, and it was all about praising the Most High. It really was. It was all about praising the Most High. After that wrapped up, I'm trying to think. I don't remember if we did something after that or if we went from there straight on back to the cabin. What did we do? I don't recall if we did something else after that or not. I'm thinking that maybe from there we went straight on back to the cabin. We may have gone down. I don't think we went back down to Pastor Dowell's that night. I don't recall. It was dark or after dark when we came out of there, and at that point we were very tired. So then so Sunday morning, we got up, first day, got up early, and at that, everybody met at the dining hall for breakfast. And we met down there. Breakfast was amazing. There were 3 or 4 different kinds of pancakes, turkey bacon, eggs, and oatmeal, and some other little fixings on the side, coffee, juice. And again, fellowship, meeting people, having conversation, talking, and the stay was entirely too short. It really was. It was too short. So I guess there was a short interview that Pastor Dowell and I had together there, and then he was off to work, and we had to get on the road because we had about 7 or 7.5 hours to come home. And so that was the bulk of the trip. Among some of the questions that I asked, one of the key things that I was really interested in, I was interested in a couple things. Certainly hearing the story of where the community had come from and how they had started with almost nothing, a piece of property and some dilapidated trailers and a vision. Speaks well not just of the visionary, Pastor Dowell, but also some of those who initially in the first days got in the trenches with him to start working this thing out. They've been there for more than 25 years, if I'm not mistaken. So this is not a new or a young venture, and currently have something like 14 or 15 other communities, satellite communities, that are started around the country in a lot of different places, and I think other places that are interested in doing something of that sort. In terms of how the community runs, it's my understanding that the community really tries to function on an Acts chapter 2 principle, having everything in common. Most people, what they do is they put their assets into the pot, and then out of the pot, they are, everything's taken care of. You don't have a mortgage, you don't have a car payment, you don't have insurance payments, you don't have food, you don't have to worry about electricity or any of those things. All of that comes from part of the community, but you're also given a stipend or allowance for personal desires, what have you. I saw nobody lacking anything. Every house that I got a chance to stick my head in was well appointed on the inside, and very nice on the outside. Everything's well maintained, well taken care of. The property itself now, I think, I may have said this, I think now is over 100 acres, and there may be other options to expand in the future, as well as there are others looking in the area for additional pieces of property and such. Not to mention the satellite communities. Each of the satellite communities, as I understand it, is its own foundation and functions on its own. It's it's affiliated with, but maybe not directly under the management of Straitway, Tennessee. What Pastor Dowell is doing is working. I will say that. We had a couple interesting conversations. So one of the conversations, one of my big questions is, okay, if everything is owned by the foundation, or by the, and it's not technically, I guess, by the ministry. I don't know exactly. I think that it's described as by the foundation. One of the questions that I had is, how then do you how do you keep Torah in terms of having an inheritance for your sons, or how do you keep Torah with other things that are specifically related to the ownership of heritable property and this sort of thing, and Pastor Dowell had a satisfactory answer to that. I would say, and this is just me and my personal opinion, and this goes with my thoughts as I've processed, because my heart's desire is community, is maybe having, property that's owned by individuals with common areas and large common operations, and having somehow agreements for functioning that way, but that would take a whole lot of different thought and maybe a slightly different process. But I'll say this, what Pastor Dowell is doing is working very well, and for those who are interested or drawn to that, absolutely. I would say that's fantastic. Other things, let's see, what else would I take away from that? For me, one of the things, and this is just being really honest, a lot of love and a lot of respect for Straitway, and I absolutely expect to remain or to be in close association, but maybe not necessarily affiliated. We are Israelites, we are brothers, there's no question in my mind. But one of the things that for me, I heard it a few times and I was like, huh? Because they refer to that piece of property as the land, and have to leave the land or coming back to the land. And when I look at scripture, I always associate the land with Israel. It's that direction, about 7,000 miles. The property that was given to Yaakov, and according to Ezekiel chapter 37, we will dwell on the land that I gave my servant Jacob. Look at Ezekiel chapter 37, verse 24 through 28. So to me, that was kind of an interesting one. But I think it's just a difference in understanding of Scripture and, at least the temporary holding that we have in the diaspora until the time of our return. One thing that I will say about Straitway, it was amazing to me to be in a fellowship that was very much integrated in terms of brothers of every color. So a lot of people, I think, Pastor Dowell has been, and maybe in his journey, some of this and trying to understand, I would say that Israel was scattered in all directions. And I would say that there are Israelites, there are those of Judah, there are those of other tribes in every direction, I believe. Ultimately, even Scripture talks about some returning from the north, or a lot returning from the north. But I absolutely believe that there's a significant portion of Israel that went into Africa at a couple different points, both with the time of the Queen of Sheba. Later on, we have some with Jeremiah. We have some that were a number of communities of Judah that were in northern Africa, Alexandria, and some of these other places, significant places from trading. And then ultimately, I think that there were many at the time of the Romans that got pushed south into Africa. But they were also taken every other direction. And the return of Israel, whether grafted in or natural born, matters not. All of us are Israelites. But the return of Israel will be from every tribe, tongue, and nation, and it will come from all over the planet. And it was amazing to see that at Straitway. I mean, had South Korean family that I met. There are those from parts of Central and South America. There are those from, there was one that is Syrian by way of Iran, and then later Sweden. And so he was interesting to have a discussion with, and I do not remember his name, but had an interesting discussion with him that really didn't get to finish. At some point we'll get a chance to finish that. So there was that. But every color, from very dark to very light, everything except for, I didn't see any purple with pink polka dots. But other than that, red, yellow, black, white, the whole deal, in harmony, in unity, and that was wonderful. There are so many bodies that you can go into that claim to be this part or that part of Israel, and they may be, but you'll find that they're all one flavor or one color of ethnicity or one background, where this was very much a diversity of those pulled together that all are part of Israel, part of the greater body of Messiah through Jacob. Let's see, what else? There were some other things, a couple other little things. I would say this, if the Father's calling you into community, Straitway is one very good option to take a look at. Community is a serious step, and it's my understanding that the satellite communities, a lot of them will start by having 2 or 3 or 4 families in a household, or one house, get a large house, so that they can then pool their resources and be able to get rid of or finish getting rid of debt, and then pool resources for the purpose of purchasing a large piece of land, or a piece of land that they can start on. And that's a pretty good strategy. It's actually taking, it's absolutely taking advantage of the system and taking advantage of reduced expenditures by keeping a lot of your income, keeping it at home, and then finding a way to together build a community and do the work with your own hands instead of paying other people to do stuff and reach out for those things. trying to think if there are any other things. I probably should have made some notes. We've already gone about 40 minutes, 45 minutes. But I was very impressed. I really was. I was very impressed. I think very highly of Pastor Dowell and what he's doing. And if the Father's calling you in that direction, I would say absolutely. Easy 4.5 out of 5 stars for what I saw, what I witnessed and experienced. At no point did I have any kind of red flag or any check in my spirit for anything. Probably the one thing that I need to think through more is exactly how to go about structuring a community, and whether or not it's something where everything is held in common. I understand that from Acts chapter 2, but I struggle with whether or not that is that's the expectation of the way Torah is supposed to function for the whole of Israel. But it does seem to be the way a patriarchal unit or a clan would function, with divisions in property lines and property holdings. We would see that, for example, you can't move a neighbor's boundary stone if there is no boundary to be moved. And so in that regard, that's probably the one thing that I really would have to process and work through and figure out if that's the best way to do it. And this isn't me talking to Straitway. This is just me giving my opinions and understandings with regards to communities and how a community should function. Because of our Western individualism, we tend to, American individualism, me and my horse alone on the range kind of mindset, who needs everybody else. One thing that community does is it absolutely breaks down a lot of that individualism and individuality. And I think, as much as Americans tend to value that, that's probably not, really a tribal people and a patriarchal people are going to be more family oriented and not individually minded. They should be clan oriented and not me oriented. And so the community structure certainly breaks that down and begins to work on making us as individuals much more connected or interwoven, might be a good way to put it. So all of that is very, very important. And one of the steps towards the restoration of Kol Israel is community. And one of the things, the next step, one of the things I ponder often and work on often in the back of my brain is trying to figure out, how do you start establishing an economy, our own economy, wherein we are handling our own trade and we are producing a lot of our own products and keeping money in the family. Those who have known me, and even on my blog, I've written in the past about the fact that when immigrants came into this country, they would set up enclaves like Little Italy or Chinatown, or the Irish Quarter or the French Quarter or whatever, where they would band together and support each other's businesses and help each other for the purpose of launching their children into the economy. Well, we should be doing just the opposite, is banding together and working together so that we keep our money at home and in our communities and in our family, and or in Kol Israel, for the purpose of building and strengthening and including and bringing others into our family and building the family, not building that out there, because that out there isn't what we're about, and it's not going to bring us home or take us home, and it's not going to restore Kol Israel. That out there is about destroying Israel, where we need to be finding ways to build Israel and building bridges and working together. So I would wrap up with this saying it was a fantastic trip. It was a fantastic opportunity to meet lots of like-minded brothers. Fantastic opportunity to be building a bridge, and part of it is building bridges between all these different pieces of Kol Israel for the purpose of bringing us together, and that's one of my big heart's desire, and I believe that Straitway is a big piece of what is going on out there, and they're absolutely getting headship and patriarchy and family right. They're getting community right. I'm liking what I'm seeing. I really liked what I saw. Would love to see some of the other communities and just interact with more of Straitway. And I look forward, if depending on what Yah's will is, who knows? I may have a chance to spend a feast with Straitway somewhere at some point in the future, and that would be a real joy. It would be a blast, is what it would be. That would be pretty incredible. So, all right, guys, I probably could go on. I've kind of exhausted the things that were on the top of my list, but I am confident that more pieces from this trip will be coming out over time, and just sharing what I'm learning. But again, I was very impressed. Very much felt like it was, that the Father's presence was there for everything. That the hearts of those in leadership, from Pastor Dowell all the way down, very much a desire to serve, a desire to take care of brother, a desire to build and connect Kol Israel, and for that I am absolutely grateful. And I call them brothers, I would call them family, and am very glad to know them. So, good stuff. Straitway, hats off to you. You guys are doing a great job. Appreciate it. I appreciate your hospitality, and I certainly look forward to fellowshipping with and spending more time with you guys. And I'll be wearing my shirt proudly. So good stuff. For King and Kingdom, I bid you shalom.